Our topic today is defying borders. I must have gotten the wrong memo because I want to talk to you about defining borders. You've each been given a piece of paper and a pencil. The paper has some written stuff on it, but you can save that until you go home. Would you flip the paper over to the blank side? And first you need to draw a line. Let's make it a vertical line from top to bottom, dividing the page. It should, oh, they handed out the wrong volunteers. The piece of paper you've been handed is to take, it's got stuff on two sides and that's the wrong one. That's okay. You want to just do it in your minds? Imagine that you have a piece of paper with a blank side. There is one somewhere in this room. And draw a line. First you draw a line from top to bottom. And on the left side of the line, put a minus sign. And on the right side of the line, put a plus sign, just like in math. And now as quickly as you can, without thinking about it too much, just very quickly, write down anything you can think of under the plus sign that you really, really like. Things, it can be food, a movie, a color. It doesn't matter. This is not a test. There are no right or wrong answers. Nobody's going to see this. So you can be completely honest, and you can also make mistakes. Under the minus sign, as quickly as you can, write down anything that really you dislike strongly. Food, celebrities, advertisements on TV, habits of drivers on I-10. Anything you can think of, it doesn't matter. I'll give you a couple of minutes, very valuable minutes, to do this, and while you do, I'll keep talking. Usually when I present this exercise, which I present on the first day of every class I've taught to artists and to students learning about art, for reasons that I'll tell you in just a minute, I usually write on the board while they're filling out their pluses and minuses. Remember, it doesn't matter what you put down. This is not a test. Javier Bardem. Donald Trump. Chocolate. Licorice. Now, these are mine. Each person has unique preferences. I first read about this exercise, and I first did it the way you're doing right now, in a very self-conscious, rather superficial, shallow way, I must say, nearly 30 years ago. I read it in a book by Joanna Fields. The book is titled A Life of One's Own. It's been out of print forever. And because this exercise changed my life, I started introducing it to all of my classes as a gift. And it served a lot of purposes. One is, believe it or not, an exercise like this automatically enhances your creativity, automatically. I don't have time to go into that subject today. Invite me back another time and I'll talk to you about the creative process. You'll be surprised at what improves your creativity and what diminishes it. Also in talking about art, which is what I've done for the last 40 years, to people who sometimes are art majors but usually are not, one of the first things a person has to do is set aside one's own likes and dislikes, one's own personal preferences. Because our subjective responses to art doesn't tell us much about art. If I tell you that I like strawberry ice cream, but I don't like chocolate ice cream, you haven't learned anything about ice cream. You've learned about me. By the way, I like both flavors. And the same thing is true about art, literature, music. It is possible to not like something, but to recognize its value and its importance. So this is a really great exercise. But the reason I'm presenting it to you today is that I hope you will take this exercise and continue to do it in your day-to-day life. What this exercise does is it programs a mental file so that if you choose to, when you're out in the world doing your ordinary activities and something happens that makes you say, I hate when that happens, you'll add it to your list. Or, oh, I love that so much, you'll add it to your list. Now, I've kept a list for almost 30 years. And I projected an old notebook. You can tell it's old because it says under, well, you can barely read it, things I don't like, it says cellular phones. Now, when is the last time you ever heard anybody say cellular phones? So this notebook is one that I carried for about 12 years until it disintegrated. Now I have another one in my purse at all times. Understand that younger people are now making lists this way, but there is something about writing these ideas down as they occur, these facts down as they occur. And what happens is your life and your response to life reveals the authentic you, what you truly like, what you truly dislike, not what mama and daddy want you to like, not what school taught you to like, not what the advertising world wants you to like or dislike, or your preacher wants you to like or dislike. Your authentic responses automatically to the world. Here's a close-up of a few of mine. They're sort of out of focus, but it says, I don't like people saying something will take 15 minutes when they know it'll take 30 minutes. I hate that. I don't like men without shirts in public when they're not on a beach. I mean, what's with that, guys? I don't like that. I don't know how y'all get away with that. My likes, and you can tell that this is done in different colors of ink in different years as these things happen. I love, for example, when I'm stopped at a stoplight and the car in front of me has its turn signal indicator on and it's blinking in time to the music on my radio. I love that. Can't make this stuff up. I love being alone in a strange place, particularly in a foreign country. If I had a superpower, it would be invisibility. Oh, I love making private eye contact with babies in the supermarket line, waiting in line at the post office. It's a little blessing, a two-way blessing. I love it. Now, my likes and dislikes tell you about me. Your likes and dislikes, if you choose to continue with this list, will reveal stuff about you, and you won't believe it. For example, after months, years, decades of keeping this list, I can look at my dislikes, and what I find out is almost all of my dislikes, not all of them, but many of them fall into a category of unnecessary interruptions. So I've devised strategies to avoid that. I go to get my car oil changed. I say, how long will it take? He says 20 minutes. I say, what's the longest it might take? And he says, it might take 50 minutes. And I go, I'm sorry, I only have 30 minutes. I'll see you. And it saves me a lot of negatives. Oddly for me, almost all of my likes, my pluses, occur when I'm by myself. Which means if I want to be happy, if I want to create a life for myself, this is personal now. My likes are mine, yours will be yours. I need to develop a lifestyle, a day-to-day life that awards me a lot of solitary time. Anybody knowing me growing up wouldn't believe this. I was not programmed to be solitary. But in order to have lots of pluses, I need solitary time. This is cheaper than a psychiatrist, and it works, and it will surprise you. You can't make it up. This is the real you. So I encourage you to do it. Back in the 1980s and 90s, I was a real serious artist, and it was a great time to be a serious artist. We had galleries everywhere, exhibition opportunities all over the place, and I made big, ambitious, serious art about serious subjects with lots of content that had philosophical or social, political messages or questions. And then in the 1990s, for some reason, I did a series of paintings about beaches filled with people. And they were big and ambitious, but they were ambitious in the way art is ambitious. It was about pictures, patterns, paint. It wasn't about anything philosophical, social, or political. They were just big, fun paintings. And they really didn't have any content. They were just for, except for the art stuff, except for the one on the far right. This painting is 7 feet tall, 7 feet by 5 feet. And it was inspired by a photograph I saw, just a tiny little photograph that had a handful of people, some in the water, some on the beach. And when I studied the photograph, I noticed that the people in the water were making little bitty reflections and the people on the beach were making really long cast shadows. And that reminded me of one of my favorite quotes. In my little notebook, I keep quotes too, lots of lists. And this is a quote by the great British writer Alexandre Byatt. In her novel Possession, one of her characters says, "Vocabularies are crossing loops and circles. We're defined by those lines we choose to cross or to be confined by." Think about it. Vocabularies define us. The lines we choose to cross, the lines we refuse to cross define us. The words we choose to use, the words we refuse to use, the words we choose to hear, the words we refuse to hear define us. The images we choose to look at or to make, to create, the images we refuse to look at or to create, those define us. So I named the painting Byatt's Beach, because the people who choose to be on the orange side of the painting, and I added lots and lots of figures, this is a big invention, but it was a way to visually illustrate that wonderful quote that I think is true. The people who chose to be on the sand, chose to be on the blue side in the water, make their mark as a little vertical reflection. The people who choose to be on the sand make a very different mark. Getting ready for this and thinking about lines we choose to cross and lines we refuse to cross, I decided to make a list of certain lines that I choose to cross or not. Now, I stopped at 20. I could have gone on forever, and I also was aware that I was presenting this in public, so this is very different from an exercise I would do if I were doing it privately. If you weren't going to see some of the lines I choose to cross, it'd be a different list. But, for example, I do not and will not use the racial slur N-word, never. Now, sometimes in movies I have to listen to it, but if I ever hear it in the real world, I will walk away, I will unfriend the person who uses it, I refuse to cross that line. The F word is a whole different story, though. I don't know how I lived without it. And I've been up here talking for almost 10 minutes and I haven't used it yet, and this may be a personal record. I don't know. We are defined by those lines we choose to cross or to be confined by. So I turned this into a little project, and I made a series of crossing circles and loops, just like we did in kindergarten. And I numbered them 1 through 20 to conform to the list I had made. And then using magic marker, I darkened in the lines I choose to cross, and I ignored those that I choose not to cross. And then I went out and bought some really pretty gold paper, and I turned my design into a self-portrait, a visual definition of me. It's just an exercise. You've been given directions for it if you want to try something like this on your own. It's a good way to think about what lines you choose to cross and which ones you refuse to cross. And of course, these things aren't fixed. The image of me would be very different 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and it will change in the future. I've been so lucky to live an art life, to make an art life. But to make a living is another story. So over the years, for 40 years, I've taught. I've taught about art, I've taught art. And I've just recently retired from that, 40 years. And in 1999, well, if you've ever taught, you know that you learn as much from teaching as you teach. You get as much as you give. And in 1999, I decided to sum up the lessons that art had taught me over my career. And at first it started out as a 200-page book, and then I boiled it down to art's basic lessons, and it became a small book called Getting It, and it's only 75 pages. At the very end of it, I describe all the things that art does, and I want to share this with you as a way to end my discussion today. Art does many things. It acts as a mirror, a telescope, a microscope. It serves as an antidote, a forum, an invitation, a quest and a question, a possibility, a statement. It celebrates. It illuminates what is otherwise obscure. It provides a voice for those who are otherwise unheard. Art asks important questions. Is meaning possible? Can art create meaning? Is the breaking down of barriers possible? Or today, maybe I should say, can we defy borders? Is the resolution of opposing forces possible? Is the sharing of power possible? Is authenticity possible? Finally, maybe most important, where should we draw the lines? Thank you.